Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
Yeah.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL Week 9 recap. Before we jump into those games, though, just a few quick things of news, starting with Giants safety Xavier McKinney breaks his hand in an ATV accident over the Giants' bye week. Now, he went and vacationed in Cabo while the Giants were on bye week, had some time to vacation with his family, and then went on a guided ATV tour, which he then rolled the ATV and broke his hand, the one that he had around the throttle. So just an insane, unlucky string of events right there for Xavier McKinney, especially considering he is a pretty damn solid part of an overall really good Giants defense, a defense which has been carrying them through this sort of miraculous run they've had so far this season. So you really hate to see an injury like that, especially in an avoidable bye week injury like that. But nevertheless, he'll only miss a few weeks and then he'll be back and ready to play again for that defense.
Yeah, it's a fluke deal, but that just shows that anything can happen anywhere.
Even on the bye week. And then next up, some huge news. Colts fire head coach Frank Reich after their awful, highly disappointing start to this season, and then hire Jeff Saturday as their interim head coach. Saturday was an All-Pro and 6-time All-Pro center for the Indianapolis Colts. He played through almost the entirety of Peyton Manning's career with Indianapolis. And now, after being an ESPN analyst for the past few years, is a head coach of an NFL football team. So kind of a crazy turn there. I can't remember it ever happening, but here we are.
Yeah, it's quite a shocking hire. Usually when someone gets fired, they promote from within. But this time, Jim Irsay decided to go and reach out of the box and out of left field and pull in an analyst who was just on TV earlier that day.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's kind of a weird little thing there, but crazier things have happened. He'll probably go in and practically give him a playoff push. Who knows anymore with the NFL. But those were the only two. Or no, sorry, I'm forgetting one. On very, very sad news, Packers outside linebacker Rashad Gary tore his ACL in the game against the Detroit Lions and will now, of course, miss the entirety of the season.
Yeah, he was probably our best defensive player that's been playing right now. Leads the team in sacks with 6 of them. And the way the Packers been playing, he'll still lead the team with sacks with 6 of them at the end of the season. So
Oof, that's a rough one. Yeah, his up-and-coming season was kind of the only bright spot in a really dull Packers season so far. So, of course, just kick them while they're down. Put dirt right in their face. He's out for the season. Now moving on to the games for our NFL Week 9 recap, starting with the Thursday night football game of the Eagles going to Houston and beating the Texans by a score of 29-17.
yeah, this was really a lot closer than people realized. The Texans started out 7-0, drove right down the field, and were able to get an opening drive touchdown. And they were able to keep it competitive through most of this game, right up till the end, where the Eagles kind of pulled away in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, if you compare the absolute beatdown this should have been, Davis Mills was like a gladiator out there. He was constantly being attacked by the Eagles defense. He was missing his number 1 and number 2 receiver. Brandon Cooks wasn't out on the field, which is already a huge blow by itself. And Davis Mills was out there throwing dimes to his backups, 3rd and 4th receivers, backup tight ends. I mean, it is just insane to think about how well Mills played. But nevertheless, the Hungry Lions, the Eagles defense was just too much for Mills to overcome in the end. Next up, we had easily game of the week, in my opinion. We had the Miami Dolphins heading to Chicago to take on the Bears and just barely eking out a win by a score of 35-32, with the game that included the league's leading rusher this week, Justin Fields, with 178 rushing yards and then 1 rushing touchdown, which is just absolutely insane. And he had a 60-yard rushing touchdown, and that was only a third of his total rushing yards, which is mind-blowing to think about as a quarterback. But he just really has that winner in him. He did every single thing he could to pull this game out. But in the end, kind of just like the Texans that we just talked about, the Bears didn't have the overall weapons to take out the Dolphins rather.
Yeah, this was really quite a fun game to watch, back and forth throughout most of it. And Justin Fields actually set an NFL record with the most rushing yards in a regular season NFL game, and it did not come against the Packers. So that's always good.
By a quarterback?
By a quarterback, correct. Yep.
Just want to make sure on that one.
The playoff record is held by Colin Kaepernick, who ran all over the Packers back in the day. I think that's like almost 200 yards. But in the regular season, Justin Fields has the quarterback record for most rushing yards in a regular season game.
It just really sucks to see one player do all he can to carry a team and lose so consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not saying Justin Fields is this elite level quarterback, but he just plays so hard week in and week out and gets these games close when they shouldn't even be a competition. He just never has enough to quite pull out that win.
They'll be scary if they can get some pieces built around him this offseason.
100%. Next up, keeping it in the NFC North, we got the Packers heading to Detroit to take on the Lions, and the Lions pick up a shocking home win by the score of 15-9.
Yep, just another disappointing game and a disappointing season. It's just been that unfortunate kind of season. I mean, we had 9 possessions, and all 9 possessions ended on the Lions side of the field, and we were able to only muster 1 touchdown. And I mean, that's saying right there, that's just missed opportunities right there. Rodgers had 2 red zone interceptions and 3 total. I mean, that's just unheard of from him. He had his worst game of the year by far, and we could not get the running game going. Christian Watson got hurt. Romeo Doubs got hurt. Rashawn Gary, obviously, we talked about earlier, he got hurt. We lost Eric Stokes. David Bakhtiari re-aggravated his knee injury. So all in all, it was just a very disappointing and very injury-ridden loss for the Packers, and just another lost season.
Yeah, it's weird enough and rare enough to see Rodgers throw 3 interceptions in one game, but it's even more rare to see him throw 3 awful interceptions in the same game. You have the 2 red zone interceptions, the one where he just totally shortened the the trick play to Bakhtiari, and Aiden Hutchinson was able to cut it off. You had the one where he threw it right into the Lions defender's helmet, and then it got bounced up and intercepted. And then that one where he just totally got undercut on the seam route to the tight end right before the end zone, when they had just gotten that momentum back off of a Packers defensive interception. So it's just, everything is off about the team. Obviously, now they're out Rashawn Gary, but it's very different to see Rodgers so far off, because usually the team around him struggles, but he kind of keeps them in it. So I think that age is really starting to show that he can't put a team on his back like he was always used to be able to do.
Not anymore.
Not quite anymore.
He has a full team around them. Hopefully they can either get that together or, I guess, look towards next season. But it's just a tad too early to look towards next season. We're not eliminated yet.
The Jordan Love show, it's on the way.
Oh, no.
Next up, from one shocker to another, we have the Bills heading to New York to take on the Jets, and the Jets winning at home by a score of 20-17. Now, I would have never guessed that the Bills were going to lose this game in a million years. I have a lot of respect for the Jets this season. I think they've had a huge come up recently, but I thought they were just far too young to take out such an established Bills team. But they are able to get it done at home. They just barely eke out a win by a field goal, not a game-winning field goal, but by 3 points. And Robert Saleh said he was keeping receipts of the doubters, and he's cashing them in now. He's showing people. He really is.
Yeah, they're battling for first place in the AFC East, and they're just a game behind the Buffalo Bills now. And the player of the game here was Ahmad Sauce Gardner, who had, I believe it was 7 pass breakups.
7 tackles, 4 or 5 pass breakups, and a huge game-changing interception
that just really changed the tide of that game. And they also forced a fumble on Josh Allen that hurt his elbow, and he could be unavailable for this week because of that injury.
Huge swing for the Bills there and overall in that AFC East. Next up, we have a game that I was very happy about with the Vikings heading to Washington to take on the Commanders and picking up a road win by a score of 20-17. I'm happy about the win, very much not happy about the way we played. I thought we looked really flat through almost that entire game, and we clutched up and was able to take out a close win in the fourth quarter. But that's good when you're facing these bad teams to be able to come out in the fourth quarter and pick up a win. When you're facing better teams, you're going to get behind and you're not going to get the opportunity to come back in the fourth quarter. I said it the whole time last week that we had to get a huge lead so the Commanders couldn't stage a comeback on us in the fourth, but we ended up actually getting behind and staging a comeback on them, flipped roles, gave them a little taste of their own medicine. But overall, I thought we just looked really sloppy. We had a lot of luck plays not go our way. The huge one being that 50-plus yard touchdown to Curtis Samuel, and where Cameron Bynum was literally pushed out of the play by the referee. But stuff like that happens. Flukes happen, and you got to be able to play through them. So I was very happy to see that we were able to play through them. I just want to watch the Vikings play a complete football game at some point this season. I'm still yet to see it. I thought this was our crash and burn game, but it clearly wasn't because we were able to get it together in the end. You know, the first drive and the last drive was all we really needed. That's all we could do.
Yep. No,
but at the end of the day,
what happened in between there.
At the end of the day, it's a tick in the win column, 7-1, so can't complain too much.
Yeah, it's the second best record in the NFL, second best record in the NFC. It's been quite the season for the Vikings, and the key here was Dalvin Cook with that huge touchdown catch. It was almost a one-hander to put the Vikings up.
Wow, a beautiful back foot loft throw by Kirk Cousins. That was pretty.
They call him Kirk Koo Chains.
Kirk 2 Chains, you mean?
Kirk something like that. But basically, on the plane rides home, Kirk Cousins just goes all gangster thug lifestyle, and he throws on a bunch of chains and
takes his shirt off,
and just looks really out of place. But he's having fun. You know, all the power to him. Winning is a lot of fun.
Yeah, fun and confidence comes when you're 7-1, that's for sure. Next up, we had an NFC West divisional matchup between the Seahawks and the Cardinals, in which the Seahawks pick up a road win by the score of 31-21. And the Seahawks are real. It's crazy to say because you would have never guessed in a million years looking at their roster, but they are picking up statement wins, and if I'm not mistaken, they are now the number one team in the NFC West, which is just insane to think about on its own. But not only are they picking up wins, they're picking up like solid wins, like borderline dominant wins in some situations. Now, this was only a 10-point game, but I think they played just as well to say it's a 10-point game, or if not, it should have been more, like a 2-3 possession game, like 17 to 20 point win, if you ask me. But overall, impressive Seahawks win.
Yeah, and this was another stout performance by Geno Smith, probably the NFL Comeback Player of the Year, who has led this team to a 2-game lead in the NFC West. And another key player here was Kenneth Walker, who had 2 late touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Now this guy, he is a closer. Did you know that 6 of his 7 touchdowns have all come in the fourth quarter? I mean, that's the kind of guy you want to close games, and he's learned to do it at an early stage in his career.
It's just insane because the Seahawks, even before Kenneth Walker, when they had Rashad Penny, it's just what they did. That's how they did it, is they were so good at closing games that if they went into the fourth quarter with any sort of a lead, they would chew that clock and they would at some point break a 50, 60-yard back-breaking rushing touchdown. And it's just how they've been winning, and it's been working. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it there in Seattle. Next up, we had the Sunday night football game of the Tennessee Titans going to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs and just barely losing in overtime by the score of 17-20. This was really a heartbreaker for Tennessee. They had no Ryan Tannehill. Malik Willis was their starter. They had the lead almost the entire game, but then the Chiefs forced overtime and were able to win in overtime. It was just so heartbreaking to see because the Titans were playing with some confidence. Willis was out there. He was actually playing well, not only running, but he was also throwing the ball pretty damn well, in my opinion. But they just couldn't beat the Chiefs. It was so close.
Yep, the Chiefs were just able to pull away there at the end. I think that the Titans just didn't have enough firepower to match them. That defense shut them out for a good part of the game, but Patrick Mahomes was able to put it together and get the game-winning drive or game-tying drive late in the fourth quarter with his legs. This time, usually it's with his arm, but this time he had a magical TD run to put the game in, to force the game into overtime.
Yeah, Derrick Henry went into half with, I want to say, just over or just under 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, and finished with only like 115 and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah,
so
the Chiefs defense figured out how
really
to shut him down
impressive
in the
by
second
Steve
half.
Spagnuolo to shut him out in the second half like that. And then finally, our Monday Night Football game with the Ravens heading to New Orleans to take on the Saints and picking up a comfortable win by a score of 27-13. I personally barely got to watch this game, so I don't have much to say, but the little bit I did get to watch, snippets here and there, it looked like it was never even too close of a game.
No, Lamar Jackson, even without his top 2 targets, were still able to put together quite a game, and had a couple of touchdowns, one to Isaiah Likely, who was turning out to be quite the superstar tight end from Coastal Carolina. Yeah, the Saints just, for the first time, first time in a few weeks, they were not able to put up over 30 points. And it really showed here that they were not able to score the points. And now that Andy Dalton has kind of run his course, maybe they'll go back to Jameis Winston, get the eater of W's back in there, maybe start eating some W's. We'll see. But 13 points sure isn't going to cut it with that Saints team.
Yeah, the few plays I did get to watch, Andy Dalton got his ass beat by that defensive line and then threw a kind of game-ending interception about midway through the 4th, and then I turned the TV off and went to bed because I knew it was over. But overall, good win by the Ravens. That is this episode, our NFL Week 9 recap. Tune back in tomorrow for our NFL Week 10 prediction episode. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.